What if everything you believe about the future is about to change? Ancient prophecies warn of a ruler who will deceive the whole world before the end of time. Is he already among us? The signs are being fulfilled, and ignoring them could be a fatal mistake. Today, you will discover the truth that few dare to reveal, but be warned, once you know this, there will be no turning back. Chapter 1. The Lost Prophecy Predicting the End Times. The world has always been obsessed with prophecies, visions of an uncertain future that seem to foretell events far beyond human comprehension. But among all the ancient prophecies, few are as impressive and disturbing as those of the prophet Daniel. Written thousands of years ago, his revelations not only anticipated the rise and fall of empires, but also described in astonishing detail what many believe to be the ultimate fate of mankind. Chapter 2, The Kingdom That Will Never Fall. Since the dawn of time, empires have risen and fallen like dust in the wind. Great nations have been raised up under promises of glory, only to be reduced to ruins. But according to Daniel, there will be a kingdom that will never be destroyed, a dominion that will not bow to the failings of human rulers. This will be a kingdom led not by men, but by God. Daniel not only predicted the collapse of powerful empires, but also described an event that would change everything. In his vision, he witnessed a dream revealed to King Nebuchadnezzar, where a colossal statue represented the nations that would dominate the world. The golden head was Babylon, the silver chest represented Medo-Persia, the bronze belly symbolized Greece, and the iron legs corresponded to Rome. But then something unexpected happened. A stone not cut by human hands came down from heaven and completely destroyed the statue. This stone symbolized the eternal kingdom, God's rule over all creation. Unlike previous nations, this kingdom would never be shaken, it would never know corruption or injustice. It would not depend on political strategies or powerful armies, but on an absolute and incorruptible authority. When Daniel revealed this dream to the king, he not only impressed the Babylonian court, but also showed that earthly powers are only temporary. The final fate of the world will not be dictated by presidents, generals, or monarchs, but by a divine force that no one can stop. And the scariest thing, all the nations he predicted actually existed and fell, just as he described. Now only one last stage of this prophecy remains, the eternal kingdom that is yet to come. But if all this is true, where are we now in this timeline? Are we on the threshold of this great event? Chapter 3. The Awakening of the Nations and the Ignored Warning. What sets Daniel's prophecies apart from so many others is the precision with which he described the cycles of the rise and fall of civilizations. But there is one detail that is often overlooked. He also warned of the signs that would indicate that humanity is about to enter its final phase. In his vision, Daniel spoke about the kingdoms that would rise and fall before the arrival of the last divine government. He mentioned an era of divided nations, a time when fragile alliances would try to unite incompatible peoples and cultures, a period when political instability and moral decay would become the norm. And the most worrying thing, all of this is already happening. Not only is humanity living in a fragmented world, but it is also facing a moment of spiritual crisis like never before. Values that have been held for centuries are being diluted. Faith is being replaced by skepticism, and the concept of truth has become relative. Daniel prophesied that in the last days, people would become increasingly wise, but at the same time, increasingly distant from true spiritual wisdom. In a world where technology advances at a frightening speed, but the fundamental principles of faith are constantly challenged, his words have never seemed more timely. If the sequence of Daniel's prophecies has been fulfilled so far, what is stopping the last piece of this puzzle from falling into place? Are we living in the final moments, before the fulfillment of this vision. And if this eternal kingdom really is at hand, what does that mean for the world we know today? Daniel knew that these truths would be difficult to accept, so he left a clear warning. Those who keep their faith and continue to seek the truth will be the ones who find refuge when the inevitable happens. But for those who ignore the signs, the surprise will be overwhelming. The question that remains is, are you prepared for what is to come? Let me know in the comments. Chapter 4. The 70 weeks prophecy, the divine clock is ticking. Daniel not only prophesied about the rise and fall of empires, he also revealed a detailed timetable for the final events of humanity. This prophecy, known as Daniel's 70 weeks, precisely describes the exact timing of the Messiah's coming, the destruction of Jerusalem, and according to many scholars, the events that will lead to the end of the world as we know it. According to the Book of Daniel, the time of humanity was divided into 70 prophetic weeks, each representing 7 years. The first 69 weeks were fulfilled, exactly as he predicted, culminating in the coming of Jesus Christ and the destruction of Jerusalem by the Roman Empire in 70 AD. But there is one detail that few realize: the last week has not yet been fulfilled. The final period, known as Daniel's last week, would be a time of great tribulation, where a deceitful ruler would make a pact with many nations, but in the middle of this period would break the agreement and begin the greatest religious persecution ever seen. It would be a time of global chaos, unprecedented crises, and the collapse of everything humanity has built. And where are we now on this prophetic clock? According to the most accepted interpretation, humanity is living in an interval between the 69th and 70th weeks. The prophecy is waiting for its final moment to be fulfilled. What does this mean? That there is a point of no return, a moment when the world will be forced to choose sides, and at any moment this final period could begin, if everything has happened exactly as Daniel predicted so far. What's to stop the last prophecy from being fulfilled? What will happen when humanity finally enters this final week? Chapter 5. The Rise of the Antichrist, the figure who will change everything of all Daniel's prophecies. Perhaps none is as alarming as his vision of a global ruler who would emerge in the last times. A charismatic, seemingly benevolent leader who would unify the nations and bring a false peace to the world, only to later reveal his true nature and plunge humanity into total chaos. This ruler was described in frightening detail not only by Daniel, but also in the book of Revelation. He would be a master of deception, someone who would win the hearts of the masses and convince the world that he has the answers to all problems. He won't appear as an oppressive dictator from the outset, but rather as a peacemaker, a crisis solver. Someone who will bring the world together in one purpose. But behind this facade of harmony, he will carry a dark plan. At some point, he will break his promises and impose an authoritarian regime that will demand total submission. Those who refuse to follow his orders will face persecution, and the whole world will be forced to choose between their loyalty and the truth. Daniel described this leader as the little tip growing out of the 10 horns, indicating that he would emerge from a group of powerful nations. He would overthrow 3 rulers to consolidate his power and finally take global control. But his rise to power would not be based on political strength alone. He would possess a profound spiritual influence, deceiving even those who consider themselves faithful to the truth. The book of Revelation complements this vision, warning that this ruler would not come alone. He would be accompanied by a religious figure who would promote his ideology and convince the world that he is the true savior. Together, they would create a system of total control where those who refused to follow their orders would be isolated, persecuted, and even eliminated. The most frightening thing is that Daniel and other prophets warn that in the last days, many people will not recognize this danger. They will be deceived by false promises of security and progress. They will be led to believe that this leader is the answer to all the world's problems without realizing that they are falling into the most dangerous trap in history. But there is one crucial detail: this domination will not be eternal. Daniel also prophesied that this ruler, despite his immense power, will come to a sudden and definitive end. His reign of terror will be interrupted by the arrival of the true king, the one whose dominion will never be destroyed. The question is, how many will be prepared to recognize the truth before it's too late? Chapter 6. The End Times. According to Daniel, the final judgment is approaching. Among all of Daniel's prophetic visions, one stands out for its intensity and the devastating impact it announces. It is about the final judgment, a moment when all of humanity will be confronted with the absolute truth. Daniel described this event as a heavenly courtroom scene. He saw a throne of fire, a glorious-looking being known as the Ancient of Days, who sat in judgment. Before him, millions of spirit beings were gathered, while books were opened containing the records of all human actions. This tribunal was not just symbolic, but a representation of the ultimate fate of all nations and individuals. Every human being would have to face this judgment, where there would be no excuses, false narratives, or empty justifications. Only the truth would be taken into account. Daniel saw something even more striking. A being described as the Son of Man approached the Ancient of Days and was given authority over all creation. This being, whom many identify as Jesus Christ, would take absolute control, destroying the forces of evil and establishing a kingdom of eternal justice and peace. The judgment would be final, sealing the fate of every person. Those who allied themselves with evil would face a terrible fate, while the faithful would be welcomed into the new kingdom. The most frightening thing about this prophecy is that Daniel made it clear that this judgment was not far off. On the contrary, it would come at a time when humanity would be distracted, absorbed in its own desires and concerns. If everything is being fulfilled, as he predicted, could it be that we are already on the eve of this event? If the heavenly court were to open now, would we be ready to face judgment? Do you believe these prophecies? Share your opinions in the comments. Chapter 7. The Mystery of the End Time. What will happen to humanity? Throughout his life, Daniel sought to understand the events of the end times, but at a certain point, he received a direct order from heaven: seal up these words until the time of the end. This means that not everything was revealed at his time. Some of the prophecies would only make sense at the right time, when world events were aligned for their fulfillment. This statement raises a deep mystery. Why were some parts of the vision hidden? What exactly was sealed? Some scholars believe that this hidden prophecy could refer to technological advances and radical changes in society that would prepare the ground for the last events. Daniel wrote that at the time of the end, knowledge would increase and many people would run from one place to another. Was he referring to the modern age? Never before in history has humanity had so much access to information, and never has it been so easy to travel anywhere in the world. But at the same time, there has never been so much confusion and misinformation. Others believe that this mystery is directly linked to the identity of the Antichrist and his world government. It may be that some truths can only be understood when the last events begin to take place. Regardless of the interpretation, one thing is certain: Daniel's prophecies were not only written for his time, but to prepare future generations for the turning point in human history. If we really are in the time of the end, then these revelations can no longer be ignored. We need to be vigilant, because every detail of these prophecies can show us exactly what is about to happen. Could it be that the last piece of this great puzzle is about to fall into place? And when it does, will we be prepared for what comes? Next, Chapter 8. The Antichrist and his reign of deception, the greatest danger in human history. Among all of Daniel's prophecies, one of the most frightening is that of the Antichrist. He will be a world leader with absolute power, someone who will rise up with promises of peace and unity, but who behind this facade will hide his true intentions to destroy faith-corrupt humanity and take for himself the worship that belongs to God. Daniel describes this leader as an arrogant being, a ruler who will defy the heavens, set himself above all spiritual authorities, and deceive the nations with signs and wonders. His power will be irresistible, and he will win over multitudes with his seductive words. But the Antichrist will not come out of nowhere. His path will be prepared slowly by manipulating the masses, distorting the truth, and creating a new world order where faith will be seen as a threat to progress. Daniel's prophecy indicates that this leader will have a meteoric rise. He will emerge as a global problem solver, someone who will bring stability to a world on the brink of collapse. However, this period of apparent peace will be short-lived, as he will soon show his true face. The darkest events will begin when he breaks a pact he has made with many nations. This will be the sign that his absolute domination is about to come to fruition. He will persecute those who refuse to follow him and set up a system of control that no one will be able to escape. The prophecy makes it clear that his rise will be accompanied by a momentous event in the temple in Jerusalem. He will desecrate the holy place, claiming divine status for himself and demanding that everyone bow down to him. This will be the apex of the deception, when many will realize too late that they have been duped. The question arises, is the Antichrist already among us? Is his plan already underway? If we look at the current state of the world, we can see signs that his arrival may be closer than we think. If everything Daniel prophesied is coming true, humanity is about to enter the darkest period of its existence. And the big question is, are we prepared to resist? Chapter 9. The Final War. The last confrontation between good and evil. If the Antichrist represents the pinnacle of deception and corruption, Daniel's prophecy also speaks of the moment when this reign will come to an end. The climax of this story will be the final battle, an epic confrontation between the forces of good and evil, where the fate of humanity will be decided. Daniel described this war as an unprecedented event where armies will clash in a conflict that will surpass human understanding. The world will be in chaos, with nations fighting each other, while the Antichrist will make his final push to consolidate his absolute rule. However, at the height of the destruction, an irresistible force will emerge. Daniel saw in his vision that God himself would intervene, destroying the power of the Antichrist and his followers. The reign of terror will come to an end, and a new government will be established, a kingdom of justice, peace, and truth. This final battle will not only be physical, but spiritual. It will be a moment of revelation where those who have chosen to remain faithful to the truth will see the definitive victory over darkness. Prophecy indicates that after this confrontation, a new era will begin. The world will be restored, and suffering will come to an end. Humanity will finally live in harmony under a divine government that will never be overthrown. Faced with this vision, the question everyone needs to ask themselves is, whose side will we be on when that time comes? The clock is ticking, and everyone's fate will be decided by their choices now. Are we ready for the great battle to come, or will many still be blind when it all happens before their eyes? What we have seen today is not just a wake-up call, but a call to awareness. The signs are before us, and ignoring them could be costly. Now, I want to know what you think. Do you believe that these prophecies are already being fulfilled? Leave a comment and share your view. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. The future may be closer than we think.